Hercules was one of the greatest heroes of the Roman times, and he was borrowed from the Heracles of ancient Greece. Basically, we always go by his Roman name these days, but we should remember that the character is essentially completely adopted from the Greek. He's an old character. He's in Homer and so many of the other old sources. Sometimes a god, sometimes a human, somewhat of a demigod, I suppose. Hercules was the one who everyone respected. He had the greatest strength. Maybe not the greatest cunning, but that's because he didn't need it. He accomplished everything that he set out to do. He was given 12 labors to accomplish in order to advance. He did all of those, and some of the famous ones are killing a lion and killing a multi-headed hydra. Sisyphus was also one of the oldest heroes from the Greek tradition, appearing in Homer and then later in the Roman Empire through Ovid, just like Heracles was continued on. Sisyphus was also strong. He was a king. He was also very clever, but the types of ways that he used his deceit made too many enemies, perhaps the most important one being Zeus. When Sisyphus needed to be punished by Zeus, he was told that he needed to push a rock up to the top of Mount Olympus, and then I guess he'll be done, but the rub is that he never finishes. He gets the rock up towards the top, but as that slope continues to increase, the rock always stumbles back down, yet Sisyphus is doomed to repeat this throughout eternity. I'm really interested in how language is used to cover both of these phenomena. We can talk of Herculean tasks, but also Sisyphean tasks. Herculean labors, Herculean efforts. Sisyphean labors, Sisyphean efforts. Sounds a little similar, but they're used to demonstrate a dichotomy, a tension between the types of work that we do when we think we are accomplishing something. I think this language originates with Herculean labors, based on those 12 labors that were passed down to kids who love these kind of stories and who try to recreate their Herculean strength on the imaginary battlefields throughout history. But before too long, the language of task was taken on, and task is not always a positive job. You might want to know before you start something big, is your task going to be a Herculean one? That is, are you going to be able to finish it? Even though you might need to expend an incredible amount of strength, if you know it's going to be accomplishable, you're more likely to want to pursue it. A Sisyphean task requires just as much strength and effort, but ultimately it is doomed. So it would be nice to know, is your task a Sisyphean or a Herculean one? I'll give you an example of a good Herculean task. In the early 80s, some mathematicians created the mathematical hydra. This is a finite-rooted tree where, when you begin, it looks like you may not be able to solve it, but it's actually always solvable. No matter how many different ways you choose to cut it, you will win. But you might waste a lot of time in doing so, but it's going to happen. Please look at this link for a good explanation, which I don't have the ability to give. But as a concept, I think the Sisyphean task is more interesting. I'll stay in mathematics. In the early 1900s, David Hilbert, one of the leading mathematicians of the day, thought that with his proposals, you would be able to solve math. He believed math was real and it was a matter of time, just working it out by the community of mathematicians over many, many decades to get the true picture. What is mathematics? We want to define every axiom and through a Herculean effort show that this is absolutely incontrovertibly true. But in the 1930s, Kurt Godel, another German speaker, threw a wrench in this project by apparently, as far as I know and I think is proven today, is believed today, has shown definitively that there are not just one math, there are many types of maths. And the one that we choose to use will give us a certain outcome that won't be true in another type of math, which is still just as legitimate. So the Hilbert program to perfectly define math was not a Herculean one, but it has turned out to be a Sisyphean one. If we jump back 2 generations before Hilbert, or almost around the same time actually, but first with George Boole, the older one, he thought he could mathematize language. And he wrote something called the Language of Thought, I think he wrote. And his project was continued, and one of the people that was a branch of his project was Frege. He's another German speaker, but more in the field of philosophy, but with a mathematical background. And he tried to continue this project. He thought that he might be able to explain all of the sets that are possible to speak, or at least all of the sets that are possible to perform with logic. But Bertrand Russell threw a monkey wrench in his program by asking whether or not the set which contains all sets that are not members of themselves is a member of that set. Did I explain that correctly? He basically said, sorry Frege, your program to completely and define logic in a closed circuit is Sisyphean. So what are we to think of these Sisyphean efforts? Are we supposed to just feel sorry for these people? All of those scientists who invested decades of scientist hours into perpetual motion machines or cold fusion. Are we just to say sorry and write them off in history? No, I don't think so. I think I would prefer to be on the side of the Herculean task, but I'm going to admit that we need others, and maybe I'm one of them, to perform Sisyphean tasks for the Herculeans to learn from. I don't think we would have had Russell without Frege, or in a more tangible example, the work of Boole and Frege and other logicians led to the fruit of Claude Shannon's identification of logic being placed in circuitry, which is leading to the information and computer revolution. So yes, the Sisyphean doesn't have to be pitied. Albert Camus, the French philosopher, wrote in 1942 that we should imagine Sisyphus as being happy because At least he gets the view of the mountain. He has something to do. It's absurd, but by him being there, he is making a contribution to the rest of us. If at least to say, okay, I'm going to do something different than that person. And that's kind of how science works. Science works by seeing the results of others and taking what needs to be taken and going into unknown territory. Whether it's Sisyphean or Herculean, we can't know when we set out. P versus NP. A famous computer program right now are all tasks within this set that's defined as NP. Are they able to be called P, or I'll just say possible? Is it possible to do these not possible tasks? And if it turns out that all of these tasks are actually Herculean and not Sisyphean, the world's going to be a much different place in about 30 years. So we'll see how it goes. Good luck on being Herculean. Good luck on being Herculean, but don't worry too much. Even if you're Sisyphean, you're helping the world. Just keep trying. That's the main point.